I recognize the gentleman from Wisconsin for 5 minutes.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Congressman Roy for having this hearing. We're dealing with very serious matter and a scary matter. I don't know whether people on the other side of the aisle know it, but right now, if I show up at your average Lincoln Day dinner filled with Republicans or a room full of people who are primarily Republican, they think what happened in Georgia and what happened in New York is just a joke. They have zero confidence, for example, in the New York justice system. I don't like the fact that we're there, but I think that is what people think. And I am one of those people who thinks that way. And I think, by the way, it goes beyond the justice system. I think the same way about the IRS. They think the same way about our customs system. They just think today the federal government is something that I would have guessed was from some banana republic growing up. First question, and it can be for any one of you. Do any of you know any situation other than what just happened in this country in which a former chief of state was charged with crimes and at one point appeared to be facing prison time after they were removed from office anywhere in the world?
Venezuela.
Venezuela. Okay, well, we're headed towards Venezuela. Anybody else can think of any time around the world in which?
Well, I mean, your description, sir, of what many people think is the degradation of our system, there are many of examples of it around the world. You have Pakistan, for example, where seems like every other president is either assassinated or prosecuted, and then the judges of the Supreme Court are themselves prosecuted and investigated. It's what I was trying to explain to the gentle lady of Vermont. We used to have a Justice Department where there wasn't fear or favor, where politics didn't play, but those days are long gone.
Right. Kind of scary. I agree with you entirely. General question, I guess we'll go for Mr. Epstein. How does the lawfare impact the broader relationship between state and federal governments, particularly in terms of constitutional authority and separation of powers? And I should also say, how does it affect how the American people view their government? I mean, we know to a certain extent just the fact that Donald Trump won the election, that people, they just felt being prosecuted by a court in New York was completely meaningless. But go ahead.
Yeah, Congressman, I think the American people who the Constitution was written for them well understand that federal questions are within the federal sphere and state questions are within the state sphere. And I think the test is if a legal question can be appropriate, if not more appropriate, for a federal court, that's where it belongs, not a state court.
I'll give you three guys a question because you all hang around with lawyers. Do you know anybody among the lawyers you hang around with who considered what happened in New York a serious, something to be taken seriously, something to be taken as other than just a trumped up political persecution to try to prevent Donald Trump from being elected? How do your lawyer friends, when they hear about this case in the paper, what do they think of it? Do they think, oh my goodness, well,
I guess the ones I hang out with wouldn't be expected to extol the virtues of that process, even assuming there were any, sir. But I think your point is the essential one, regardless of what lawyers think. People look at that, and common sense tells you this was a travesty of justice. The gentle lady can talk about the jury system, but if you cannot admit, based on 200 and some odd years of our history, that juries make major mistakes.
We're in a moral free fall in this country, and juries, like apparently prosecutors in New York, just say, I've got power here today. I'm gonna harm a politician I don't like. Is that what you were going to say, Mr. Epstein?
Well, what I was going to say is juries are great in theory, but a lot of what a jury does depends upon instructions that come from the judge. And if you have judges who view their role as political or who believe that the ends justify the means in terms of what prosecutors are pursuing, they're going to give instructions that are limited, that are problematic. And, you know, the federal courts certainly have had numerous examples of where there becomes judicial review of jury instructions that raise substantial issues for defendants' rights. And if you think about the president and the state court system, that remedy wasn't necessarily available to him.
Thank you much. Yeah, we're about where Venezuela would be. Thank you
I
again.
thank the gentleman from Wisconsin. I'd like to recognize the gentleman from New York for 5 minutes.
And I would just say, as a representative of New York City, and a former prosecutor in New York, I resent and object to the insinuation from